Okay, so on the EOS model, I want to take you through where the issues become so prominent in everybody's companies today. At the end of the day, I saw a quote whilst I was on holiday recently, and it said, "No business, no issues, no opportunity to be problem solving." Right? So as an EOS model, the first component is the vision component. And what we mean by being strong in the vision component is not just the leadership team is 100% on the same page, but the whole organization knows exactly where the company organization is going, where it is heading as a core target, and how we're going to get there. And that is consistently shared through the business. We say 7 times before they hear it the first time. So having a very strong vision component goes to the second component to be stronger, and that is your people component. So when your vision is absolutely crystal clear, you can attract, retain the best people, great people for your organization. And we call that right people in the right seats. Right people being the people who fit your culture. And in the seats, we talk about our tool called the accountability chart, where you set out the right structure for scale. You define all the roles and accountabilities in your organization, and you assign those seats with the right people that they get it, want it, and have the capacity to succeed with their time and knowledge to do that job exceedingly well. Now, the right people, right seats then goes to the data component, because great people who are succeeding, they want to know how they're they're connecting the dots to the vision. They want to know how they're succeeding. So there's a couple of things here of tools in the data component. First of all, the leadership team we see struggle to find out what they have this pulse on the business, right? So we design a scorecard with them, the handful of numbers, metrics, that they can have a complete dashboard of how the business is tracking every quarter, every year, and basically bringing that down to a weekly scorecard of 5 to 15 numbers where we know what's on track and what's off track. And this is, you'll see this come through in the issues component today, because we confront them head on every week. The other part of the scorecard is obviously migrating scorecards through every level of the organization, so that everybody in the organization have those 1 to 3 metrics, numbers that they are connecting to the vision of the business, understanding really what true engagement looks like. It really frustrates me that these polls of employees are still telling us that 66% of people are disengaged at work. Well, I think it's our responsibility as leaders to give them great data so they can understand success and they can feel really connected to our vision. I'm sure you agree. Now, when you have the vision, people, and data components really strong, I'm just going to switch this off. Just maybe it'll start when we restart it. When you have the vision, people, and data strong, you've created this really open, honest, transparent organization where everyone has a cadence. And this includes meetings and understanding the data. And what that does is it flushes out the issues component. And it's the impurities, it's the challenges, problems, obstacles, barriers, frustrations, we get it. And also those opportunities and ideas that you'd like to put on a list and say, hey, how do we actually get round to actually solving these for good? So the issues component is obviously the component we're going to cover today. The 5th component in EOS, the EOS model, is the process component. This is where you're defining the handful of core processes. Most companies have 6 to 8, sometimes more, but 6 to 8 core processes, defining their names, so it's common language, and then going a task of, in a chronological linear fashion, documenting and simplifying the 20% to get 80% conformance, and having those processes followed by everyone in the organization. And that includes you if you're the leaders, because I know after working with so many companies, it's often the leaders that aren't doing the followed by all, and all the people are looking around going, well, and one of my lessons from my dad was saying, you can't ask someone to do something you're not prepared to do yourself. So that's the process component. Taking the vision down to the ground is the traction component. The 6th component, to be strong in traction, it's instilling a focus. And we're going to learn this with the issues component today, and what is focusing versus distraction. So we're instilling focus, a discipline, and raising the accountability. And just understanding that as our teams, high-performing teams, people who love to work with each other, they love to see everybody being held to account in a healthy way so that you gain traction and obviously the rubber hits the road. So that is the EOS model as an overview. I apologize for this slide deck, guys. I'm not sure what's happening. We'll try it one more time. Let's see if it kicks in. It seems to be stuck, so I'm not sure why. Apologies for that. I can't seem to be able to unclear that. So I'll take you through it with you for the issues component. So the first thing about the issues component is celebrate it. That's what I would say. Celebrate your issues list. Okay. We've got to get really, really good at making sure that everyone in the organization can have this sort of culture and discipline that even beyond the leadership team, someone can put their hand up and say, hey guys, I've got an issue. Anybody. Now, in different cultures, I work with Electrodry there in Philippines. Hi guys. But I'm sure in certain cultures, you're brought up to also feel like it's not your place to do that. Or how can I do it in an open, honest, and healthy way? So what we're doing is we're saying it's okay to say, hey, I've got an issue. So the first discipline or tool that we use in the issues component is to have an issues list in the first place. A place where we can table those obstacles, barriers, frustrations, opportunities, and ideas. And the thing is with the issues list is once they're on there, it becomes actually quite cathartic that we're actually getting stuff out of our heads and onto the table. We know what it's like, right? Mental health is at its absolute heightened talk around the whole globe since COVID. And by just sharing issues, we have to understand and embrace people to say, you know what, it's quite okay, even if it's about me as your leader or manager. We're really trying to get people to understand it. Now, those of you already run on EOS, I'll take you through at the end of this a little bit of a deeper dive on what to do with department level 10 meetings and issues. But let's keep it high level for now. So all of your issues are on a table on a table of a list called the issues list. What we want to do now is we want to get everyone helping to solve them. So we basically want to help leaders stay on track, and we call it the issues solving track. Now, it came from a discovery that most leadership teams get into a room every week or sometimes fortnights, and they lock themselves in a room and they start to identify some bunch of stuff that they're frustrated about or need to work on. And they will discuss the hell out of that issue for like 30, 40 minutes, sometimes an hour longer. I've seen it all. And at the end of that conclusion, they go away from the meeting and come back at the next meeting, and people are looking at each other and saying, Christian, did you follow through on what we discussed last week? No, I'm pretty sure it was Mark, actually. Mark, you should have done that. And pretty much they rarely identify the root cause. They rarely identify, you know, like an action to make something go away forever as a solved issue. So they become really frustrated. So out of that discovery, we created the issue solving track. And we call it IDS. And I simply stands for identify, D stands for discuss, and S stands for solving the issue at the core and for the longer term greater good of the company. So let's go through what that looks like. In identify, guys, what I might do just to try and help you out because of the situation here is I might just try to get this going. Control now. Okay, so technology is doing me great today. Even that stopped. All right, can you see my whiteboard, guys? Is it quite clear? Cool. Yes. All right, so let's go with this. So in the three parts of the solving track, what we do know is every business has an issues list, okay? And in identify, in the I, what we're asking people to do is to simply understand that when you've actually got the issue, it's not often the issue that's actually the root cause. It tends to be written down as the symptom. So in prioritizing issues under identify, what we teach here at EOS is that make sure we're actually prioritizing the top 3 most important issues that you want to solve this week. And what that does for you is it gets the team to hone into an energy that focuses on the top 3 and not be overwhelmed by the whole list. And we call this the 1, 2, 3, right? So you're solving issues in 3s, and you've actually identified the top 3 for the week. Now, running on EOS, if a scorecard number or metric is off track for the week and there's a pattern or trend emerging that's concerning you, that should definitely be dropped down. We have quarterly priorities called ROCs for our quarterly plans. So if a ROC is called out off track by the accountable owner of the ROC, that would need to be identified and discussed and solved as to the root cause of that reason. And there could be something else. So we'll call this a people issue. Let's call this an Andy S issue, people. We've got a ROC off track, okay, and there's a merger and acquisition happening in the business, and we want an update on that because the issues list is the good, the bad, and anything that we need to share and discuss. So under identify, make sure that we're identifying the core. How best to do that? The best way to do that is to start asking clarifying questions when you're in identify. There's a real tendency when meetings are happening, leaders come into the meeting, they're looking at their watch and they're saying, come on, we got lots to do, let's get this meeting going. And there's a lot of impatience. So just settle down, deep breath. What are we actually trying to identify with Andy? Andy's a people issue. We might think he's the right person in the wrong seat. So if Andy's that issue, we just need to ask some clarifying questions to the team about how Andy is, start being human about Andy and caring for him and seeing where he potentially is having a challenge in his role. Okay, whereas normally if we just put Andy S on there, sometimes Andy S turns into a tangent and suddenly we're talking about Andrea and Deborah and everyone else as sidebars. So just stay with Andy. What have we got? We got a right person in the wrong seat or potentially a wrong person in the right seat. So this is under the identify. Now, as I said earlier, these teams typically would go into lots of discussion. With us here in IDS, when we discuss something, we discuss it briefly, okay? And we only say things once. And in EOS, we say that if you repeat yourself, you're politicking, so be mindful of that, please. But what we're saying is we're going to discuss, find input and perspective from each other. And when the discussion is a little redundant, we start to work as a team to actually go to the solve of what that decision looks like. And what that means to us is, and what we'd like to encourage you to do, is it typically obviously takes a brave decision here in the solve. And it will mean that someone's going to take an action out of that meeting. It's called the to-do list, and I'll come through that in a moment. So if we were solving an Andy issue, for example, we would identify his core issue, discuss it with the team, solve it. And what that does, it becomes a to-do to make sure that someone has an action item by next week to actually go and meet with Andy. Let's just call it Andrea. And the next date of our meeting, 31st of October, next Monday. And we'll consider that that is a solved issue. So it comes off the list, and then we'll go on to number 2. When we ask for why the ROC is off track, Ben would say, hey, our website ROC is off track. The developer's not quite really on the same page with us. So we may ask Ben, we need to get this ROC back on track next week. So what can you do about that? And he said, well, I think I've got to control the controllable. He comes up with an accountable decision to go away and speak to the website developer. And Ben's going to ensure us that he's going to get his ROC back on track next week. So as you can see, it's a pretty awesome tool to just stay on track, stay with one issue at a time. And as we solve them, we put them on this to-do list and make sure that we're doing something for the greater good of the company and for the longer term. I've seen a lot of people with the people issues like Andy. I've had clients who have worked with me for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years, and they still sometimes when they're around the people issue up to 2 years, they're still wondering, have we made the right people decision? Well, just remember the EOS model. It goes from vision to people. So that vision's really not going to be very successful or come alive as quick as you want it unless we have the right people in the right seat. So we're always going to encourage you to make swift people decisions. One little thing from me, I find here in Australia, and I'm not sure if it's the same for you, but I get a little bit sort of quite passionate about the fact that when we have people discussions, when you speak with Andy, we're just treating them like a human being. Sometimes an Andy isn't happy in our organization, but he can be really happy in someone else's organization. And that's quite okay, because if as leaders, we can always encourage people that we are just wanting them to be really happy. And if they're not happy in our business, then we're actually facilitating a happier life for them. Think of it that way. It's not always a bad thing to make strong people decisions. I've had so many text messages, LinkedIn messages, emails saying, and these are from the people who have moved on from their company that I work with. And they say, Roger, you dealt with it so well with the team. I really feel humbled the way you gave psychological safety around it. And then all of a sudden the issue is solved and everybody feels this injection of energy as you have the right people. So I'll encourage you in the Q&A to come back to me on that one. Anyway, as you can see, this is the identify, discuss and solve track. Now, when you get this really well, you'll be solving like 3 issues maybe in the first time you run it. You might be well rehearsed in EOS and running the IDS solving track for maybe weeks, months, or even years. And you'll end up seeing this expansion of how many issues are solved in your meetings, your weekly meetings, at all levels of the organization. 3, 6, 9 issues all solved. I mean, that's a pretty powerful way to run a business. I know certainly before I had the solving track, I'd probably go into the Roger mode and try and solve everybody's issues for them. And I'm sure we do all the same because we're problem solvers, right? And we want to fix it. But anyway, what we've got to do is we've got to create problem solvers in our teams, and we need to encourage them to raise the issue open and honest. I always say a well-defined issue is half solved. If we can encourage our teams to define their issue in a really succinct but clear way, it allows us to actually identify the root cause and not the symptoms a little bit more efficiently. So let's see what we can do with that. And remember that the solving track is about prioritizing the top 3 things this week. We will always have a tendency to want to do more. And this is where we need to take a deep breath and look at the top 3 and feel relieved that we've actually solved those for the greater good of the company. And people know exactly where the focus is. Okay, so that is IDS. So being strong in the issues component is around having this in every level of the organization where people can meet, raise the issues, use the solving track to IDS. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to move on just a couple of little pointers about people. Can you just put your hand up? Mark, do you run on EOS now? Are you new to EOS? You run on EOS? Awesome. We know the Philippines are. Anthony, yourself? Running on EOS, awesome. And I think Sabina was here earlier. She may or may not be there on video, but if you're with us, Sabina, welcome. And what I want you to know on the deeper dive of the issues list is when you run your department level 10s, when you're going down below the organization, you come to another level 10, and it's this one here. It's where the leader in the leadership team is having a level 10 meeting. And what I hear from people is, hey, Rog, the team aren't very good at raising issues. It always seems to be about me facilitating a bunch of stuff. And I get to the end of the meeting, I'm like, was anyone else here? So we get it. What I'd encourage you to do for this is to encourage your team to at least bring an issue, opportunity, or idea. Make it the good and the challenging, and ask them to bring at least one issue each to every meeting. So it's encouraging their open and honest, letting the guards down, understanding that when Lencioni talks to us about the trust model, we're just saying to them, hey guys, it's okay. Now, we need to often go first as leaders. So if you're not brave enough to call out the tough issues or the challenging issues or the repeating ones on a scorecard or accountable rocks, if you don't do it as the leader, then of course they're going to be a little bit arms folded at the meetings and start to feel a bit closed up. So I hope over Q&A we can get some open, honest about what that looks like in your own world and your own reality. So please encourage them. The feedback I've had on that little tip and nugget is that it works. And people have started to raise one and saying, I'm good with it. Because if we also offer an ideation, an idea or opportunity, we start to get these problem solving skills in our departments and divisions of the company. And who doesn't want that, right? We can't keep looking across the organization at every level. We can run the level 10, get them to IDS here, and you'll see the energy. And one thing EOS does really well, it harnesses energy across an organization to get focus and traction. So if we can enable people to use this awesome tool called IDS, then we will be on track for our 1-year plan and hopefully our 3-year picture and our core target, okay?